You know, the sentiments that my nephew John expressed, I want to express. So if you were taking notes, just replace mom with sister, because that's exactly how I felt about my sister. She and I had, as you know, had a bond, a sibling bond that was ingrained in us. It was part of who we were. And the fact that my sister is known for loving life and loving parties and loving people, I'm that way a little bit too. And we got that from our father and our mother, and it's been passed on to my nephews, John and Jeff. You keep eating, and have one of you at the table keep notes, okay? And I'll ask some questions later. I want to just fill in a few things that I hope you'll find interesting about my sister. My mother gave birth to 6 children between 1944 and the early 50s. Only my sister and I survived. In fact, if you think of, last name Levandakis, my sister was 3rd in line to the Levandakis throne. There was Caterini between me and my sister. My sister was 3rd born, but 4 of our siblings passed early in their life. The infant mortality back in the day, in Greece and other countries, post-war Greece, was abysmal. You know, it was intolerable. But so it was. My other 4 siblings died within the first couple of years of their life. And by all accounts and reports, my sister, Jean, to me, was the most beautiful of the Levandakis children. She was the healthiest of the Levandakis children. I was the oldest, and here I am, the last of the Mohicans, but I was a sickly little guy. You know, in the first couple of years of my life, I almost died a few times, or so I'm told. But here I am. I'm just surprised that my dear sister, who I loved, and I still love so much, predeceased me. And as you know, I lost my dear wife a few months ago. The 2 most important women from my generation in my life were my wife and my sister. And they're gone. That's 2 deep holes. But such is life. I have to survive. I have to go on. And I'm doing it. But I got a lot of help because I got good family, and they're here at the reserve tables. And I got terrific friends who are a great support to me. And speaking of support, the person that gave me the greatest support was my sister. She was our rock. You know, she went through a lot when the boys lost their dad, Harry, back in 2007. And my dear Margaret and I were there for them. But that was what we were like, my sister and me. We were there for each other all the time, forever. And when I lost my wife, my sister was there for me, front and center. We saw each other 2 or 3 days a week. We played backgammon, we shopped, we went to the movies, we went to dinners. Anyways, I'm going on to... Let me tell you something. When my sister was born, she was christened. Her actual Greek name is Georgia. I like you non-English speaking people, try saying Georgia 3 times fast. Georgia, Georgia, Georgia. That's Georgia, right? And she was so cute. Greeks have an endearing way of calling Georgia. Everybody knew her as Ugogula. Did you guys know that? Did you know Ugogula? Well, you want to try another one? Try Ugogula, Ugogula, Ugogula. 3 times fast. And that was her name. Let me jump forward. My dad came to Canada in *54. My mother, my dear sister, and I followed in '56. One memory from our journey, our trip, crossing the Atlantic, crossing the Mediterranean, then the Atlantic on the SS Olympia, right out of Piraeus Harbor. was my sister. I will never forget her. My mom and I were struggling with our bags, and my 9-year-old sister was carrying this huge doll. I mean, the doll was as big as her. Kukla. That's how you say doll in Greek. It's funny because many people referred to my sister when she was a little kid as Kukla, our living doll. And I remember people on the ship referring to my sister. Κοιτάξτε τη χαριτωμένη κούκλα, με τη μεγάλη κούκλα. You know, look at this beautiful doll with her big doll, you know, and she carried that doll everywhere, and then that doll had one of those big frou-frou, fluffy starch dresses. That's the memory I have. Anyways, we went to school, ESL classes. She was super bright, my sister. A few months after we arrived in Canada, she was leading her class. She was first in her class, and she was smart. She was responsible, dependable, lovable. She was the favorite of all the teachers. Talk about teacher's pet. Well, my sister, Jean, and by the way, I'll backtrack a bit. She was amazing. I don't know how she ended up. Well, she was Georgia, and somehow or other that became Georgina. So when we came to Canada, Georgina became Gina. Some of you older folks in the room might remember an actress named Gina Lollobrigida. Anybody heard that name before? Nobody. Okay, one. You guys go and look it up. Anyway, so she became Gina. Georgina became Gina, but I don't know if you guys know this. She never liked the name later in life, Gina. And I always referred to her as Jean, and she liked that. That's why I refer to her in front of company. But to each other, and you may not believe this, and it may sound a little harsh, I called her loser. And she called me, what did she call me, John? Pathetico. Nico Pathetico. I called her loser because she and I had, backgammon tournaments day in and day out, and she lost most of the games we played, so I kiddingly called her loser. And she called me pathetico. And that was okay because we never referred to each other that way in front of company, but I call her on the phone, hey, loser, how's it going? How's your favorite son, John, doing? And she would write back, yeah, pathetico, I'm okay. How's your favorite daughter, Andrea, doing? Wow. But that was the case. And she was terrific in school, and then we went to high school. She took some business courses, and my mom developed, I'm filling you in on too much information, probably, likely, but my mom developed chronic back problems. And she couldn't work anymore. So we had to make a decision. One of us, my sister or I, had to leave school, get a job, and help out financially. And my sister, always sacrificing for the family and everyone around her, she left school, got a job, even though in her mind she wanted to be a teacher or a lawyer. And she would have made a wonderful teacher or lawyer. And she ended up getting a job as a secretary. She met your father Harry in the 60s. And later on she got a job at a law office. And she was so good at her job, she became manager soon after. And that law office, and I'm not going to name it, but it was a very successful concern because of my sister, because she ran the office, and she was incredible. She was that smart. You know what? I saw you looking down at something when you were speaking. But was that your cell phone? Are you serious? I don't have a cell phone. I put my speech on the landline, and where is the landline? Did you bring it? My sister married your dad in the City Hall civil ceremony, 1975. I was there. I was the best man. My dear wife Margaret was there. And my sister's friend Christine were there as witnesses and bridesmaids. And I remember after the civil ceremony, we all had one too many martinis at the neighborhood bar downtown. It's a good thing we hadn't driven, but it was a super happy occasion. Although, I'll come back to this point, your mother, as you know, always wanted a church wedding, but she was happy. She and Harry got married because my dad was at death's door. He passed in 1976 at the age of 54. My wife and I had two beautiful girls in the middle 70s, Nicole and Andrea. And everybody, some of you in this audience, came to Margaret and me, hey, you're gonna go for the boy? You're gonna have the boy? You know, Greeks do that. I didn't have to, because in 78 and 79, I got the boys. My sister and Harry had two sons, and my daughters had the cousin/brothers that I guess everybody was hoping for. Harry was a dynamo, and my sister was the woman behind the man. Harry tried so many different things. I mean, he owned the soccer team. He called the play-by-play of the soccer team. He had part ownership in a Greek radio station, television and radio. In fact, did you know that I was one of your dad's DJs? I DJ'd for him on a cable radio, and I had a show called Topos Tanyata. Greeks, you understand what I'm saying? Topos Tanyata. Make room for youth. And my thing was to introduce some new music and say a few things about it. And hey, when I think of it, I don't know if that contract was fulfilled, so I'll see you guys later. Harry and Gina traveled all over North America. They literally crisscrossed. They've been to every large city in the United States, in Canada, because my brother-in-law, he was staging entertainment shows, variety shows in various Greek communities. He'd have singers, he'd have dancers, comedians, magicians, and I know that because sometimes when they couldn't rent a room for their rehearsals, they rehearsed in my basement. You know, the dancing and the singing and all of that in the basement. And then my sister seemed to work 24/7 because she was running a law office for Monday to Friday, and come Friday after work, she flew out to meet Harry wherever he was. Detroit, Phoenix, Arizona, Atlanta, Georgia, Vancouver. They're all over the place. And that's when the boys were growing up, and that's when they came into our lives. John and Jeff spent a whole lot of time. Margaret and I became their surrogate parents when Gina and Harry couldn't be around because of what they were doing. I was like a father, uncle to them. Right, John? Right, Jeff? Or a funkle, if you will. That was me, a funkle. We every card show, every sports card show, Christopher, you collect cards, or you used to, and you know what I'm talking about. Every comic show, every Comic-Con, we went to it. In the summer, when the kids are out of school, picnics, day trips, movies, we did it all. We did it all. And some people worried that we were spoiling these two guys because they got a lot of love from Jean and Harry, their parents, They got a whole lot of love from Yaya, my mother. Do you remember Yaya? And of course, they got love and attention from my wife and me. And some worried that we were spoiling them, but they needn't worry because, as you can see, they grew up to be fine men, hardworking men with feet planted firmly on the floor, and successful careers. They learned that fantastic work ethic from their mom, my sister Jean, and their father. And but as hard as they work, they know how to party, and they picked that up from Funko and their mother. Okay, jump ahead to 1995. My sister got her dream fulfilled. She always wanted a church wedding. Hey, you're listening, Nick. Nice to see you. My sister dressed in a beautiful white gown for her wedding at our house. And our house is about 5 minutes down the street from where we are now. And she always wanted a church wedding, but she wanted to be taken to and from church in a horse-drawn carriage. You believe that? Did you see a picture, any pictures here? Well, Harry, he fulfilled that wish for her. I don't know, the wedding was, it happened April 30th, John? Did you say April 30th, 1995? And half hour before we were supposed to be here for the ceremony, a chariot, a Greek chariot, a beautiful Cinderella type. Holy, talk about timing, eh? Beautiful. Hey, I know how to time things. You know, it showed up at our door, and we never had so much people traffic on our little bitty street as we did that day. Everybody came out gawking. And my sister was surprised because although I knew, your mother didn't know. And she thought, you know, where's the limo? Where's the limo? Well, a limo came for the rest of us, but my sister and I rode the carriage to this church. And that was a wonderful dream of hers fulfilled, and that was thanks to your dad. He was that kind of guy, classy guy. Although he didn't like it when I beat him at chess or ping pong, you know, he was very competitive, Harry. You know that. And we played cards and we tried to out-cheat each other during the games. And then the 2000s came, and Harry, he suffered a long illness, and my sister was there for him, taking care of him for years, and she had a lot of help. But meanwhile, she's running back and forth from the law office, and on the weekends she was running QSs. And then the boys grew up, and slowly, gradually, they took over the running of QSs. That would have been early 2000s. There you go. And I mean, and run it successfully. You know, Harry had it since the 80s, and you finally sold it in 18 or 17. There you go. And they did that. Where am I? I should be finishing here. I should have brought that landline. I could be reading it now, but my sister loved life. She loved people. She was such a gentle soul. My sister, it's funny to say, but those of you who are at my wife's celebration of life heard me go on and on about her. I eulogized her for the whole afternoon. No, don't worry, I won't be doing the whole afternoon. But they were the same. They were cut from the same cloth. They loved people. They were gentle spirits. They were totally non-judgmental. They're both gorgeous, sexy women who loved their men. Your mother treated your father like he was King Harry, and I was King Nick, or whatever, to my wife. Is that my name, Nick? I thought to myself, I'm the other guy. But no, it was great. My sister loved life, but you know, she wasn't afraid of death. Am I right, Francis? Absolutely. The only thing she asked is, when I go, I want to go fast. And I'm sorry to say that she got her wish, but we're wishing it wouldn't have happened until 20 years from now. The day before she died, she and I were having a regular tabli tournament, backgammon, and she actually won, one of those rare times, and I'm glad she did. In fact, in case you don't know, my daughter Andrea said, I know what we gotta do. We put a little backgammon game in the casket with her, and my daughter's put in a small bottle of red wine, which their aunt liked, and I'm sure there are other things there. Yes, she passed. I miss her terribly. There's another big hole in my life. I used to see her regularly. When I say regular, I mean since my wife passed, 2 or 3 times a week. We did a whole lot of stuff together. In terms of the hobbies that Jeff mentioned, just came to mind. Here are some things about my sister. She loved to read, and she loved movies. My sister and I were brought up on movies, you know, that literally, because my mom and dad were big into movies. This was pre-television Athens in Greece. So we saw a whole lot of movies. And not that it matters to any of you, but the last movie my sister and I saw with my dad and mom in Greece back in *54, before my dad came to Canada, was Quo Vadis. Anybody heard of that movie? Anyways, she loved movies. She loved to read. She loved movies, but she particularly loved horror movies. After they sold the house on 64 Wayne, where we partied every weekend, it seemed, talk about revolving doors, eh? That house, my goodness, just like yours is now. I said, so what do you want to see? And she said, I don't know. I said, let's go see the Elvis movie. You know, I hear it's good. And she loved Elvis. But no, I want to see Nope. Have you heard of that movie? It's a horror movie. It's playing now. Where are you guys? Anyway, so I took her to see Nope. But because she loved horror movies, she loved crime stories, she loved to read about real-life crime stories. She was living in her apartment, beautiful 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment for 5-6 years on her own. Is that about right? And she would watch these horror movies on her own. I don't know how she did it, because anytime I watched a horror movie with her, she would jump, she would grab my arm, but she watched these movies. She loved them. I don't want to say she believed in horoscopes, but she followed horoscopes. It was amazing. She would read her horoscope. She believed in dreams and the meaning of dreams. She knew a whole lot about dreams. She had a book. She could explain every dream to you. And she also loved having her fortune told. She went to fortune tellers, you know, glass ball gazers. She went to palm readers. She went to teacup readers. And she paid for all this. But that's how she was. I remember when we used to go to Uncle Louis' house, Nick, your dad, Joanna, remember we come to your house? And my sister, the first thing she walked in, says, I'll have a coffee, or I'll have a cup of tea. You know why? Because my Uncle Louis was able to read coffee stains in your cup or teas. And that's the first thing your mother did when we got to Uncle Louis. Do you remember that? And my Uncle Louis would read her teacup, and she would listen like it was the word of God coming out of his mouth. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, I got to wind this up. I miss my sister terribly. She and I were, you know, I'm 2.5 years older than her, but it was like we were twins, because we are so similar in many ways, and not so similar in other ways. I never shared her love for horoscopes and dreams and fortune telling, blah, blah, blah. But we are quite the same in many ways. I miss her. The other thing I miss is she was my regular opponent in backgammon, tabli. Okay, Andrea, I'm winding it down. I'm getting the hook from Andrea. And I'll miss, my wife always cut my hair. I haven't been Victoria, Alexis, I haven't been to a hairdressing salon or a barber in decades. Decades. Because my wife used to cut my hair. And when she couldn't do it anymore, my sister took over. And in fact, I had a date coming up next week for her to cut my hair. I'm sorry I look like this, it's her fault. But I'll miss that, so I'm looking for somebody to cut my hair, I'm looking for somebody to play tabli with, and I'm looking for somebody... I have some hands up. Peter? She was such a lovely, lovely, lovely woman. She loved life, she was the life of the party. She loved people, she was beautiful, she was sexy, she was unassuming, she was non-judgmental, she saw the best in people, you know, the inherent goodness in everyone. And she was burned a couple of times. You would think that would make her more cynical. No. No, she just sort of scratched it off, put it off, and continued on. And that was my sister. I will never, ever forget my sister. I love her forever. And I will miss her. I wanted to say, raise your glass to my sister. I don't know if it's if we do this, but yeah, to my sister. May her memory be eternal, and may all the memories we've all shared with her be with us always. Thank you. I'm sorry. My sister, I love her. I had to say stuff about her. End. The end. Okay.